This is the lathe in the shop. Now, lathe has many different components or pieces to it, but it's basically a very simple machine. You have a flat surface, you have a motor which turns the work, and you have a tailstock that supports the end of the work, and you have a variable speed control dial here. Now, these lathes in here are generally unplugged. To plug them in, you simply come over here, take the twist lock, plug them in, and when you're done, you unplug them. Now, this is called the headstock. The headstock is what the machine, where you put chucks or you put drive spurs and so on in here. It's the motor part, okay? So what we want to do is I'm going to go through, and this isn't a how-to video. This is a video to explain to you the different components and pieces and parts of the working lathe. Here on the headstock is a spindle. The spindle allows for a drive spur that has a number 2 Morse taper to be inserted into it. So if you were doing spindle work, you would drive this using a rubber mallet into the end of your workpiece. This is very aggressive because of the fact that it has these spurs in here, and it's very aggressive. So for the novice or the beginner, I don't tend to allow you to use these drive spurs. Instead, I would like for you to use a dead cup center, and the reason is that if you make a mistake, you put too much material or too much tool into it, it'll just spin in the lathe rather than take a big chunk out of the lathe. So this is called a dead cup center instead of a live, and we're using this in replacement of, instead of the drive spur. They're both number 2 Morse tapers, and it just goes in there. It's a friction fit. Once it goes in there and you put your workpiece in, you bring the tailstock up. You'll have to knock this out with a knockout rod. And a knockout rod is basically this piece of steel. It's over in the lathe cabinet, and what it does is it goes in this hole back here, and it allows you to knock out this dead cup center to replace it, maybe put a chuck on there instead. So you hit it from behind, make sure your hand is over it, and it comes right out. Make sure you pull the knockout rod out and put it back where it goes. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there for right now so I don't lose it. What are these threads for? These threads are for a chuck, and a chuck is something that allows the wood turner the opportunity to turn bowls and stuff. You turn a spigot or tenon on the outside of what you're trying to turn, and these jaws will clamp down evenly around the outside, or you can expand them into the inside of the bottom of a bowl. So you see this thread's on here. You hold the spindle from turning, you thread it on, make sure that this shoulder's up tight, and you can see it's got a nice tight shoulder there. And if I wanted to, I would take one of these Allen wrenches that's designed for this chuck, and these jaws would move in around something. If I had something in here, it would move around it, tighten it up, clamp down around it. Or if I had a hole on the bottom of something that I turned and I wanted to expand it into that, it's a different way of holding a bowl. But this is just a chuck. The purpose of this is just to let you be aware of the different types of components and hardware that can go on a lathe. The tailstock of the lathe is back here. Make sure that this lever is loose. Make sure it's always loose. Roll this forward, and that's 0. Same number 2 Morse taper goes in there. It's held in there with friction, okay? And I just put it in there, and it's already pretty snug. So if I wanted to get this out, let's say I wanted to change it and put in the number 2 Morse drill chuck, which allows me to put drill bits in here and drill holes or something like that. I wanted to get it out. what I would do is I'd have to back this off. I know that that's 0 when it gets to here, and then give it a little turn like so, and then this comes right out. Move this forward, and then I can replace it and put in this chuck here. And it's a 1/2-inch chuck. It's very simple like that on a drill press. Put it in there, tighten it down, and then I would move the tailstock to the workpiece, lock the workpiece or the tailstock in place with this lever. I would lock this, make sure it's nice and tight, make sure this is loose, and then instead of lowering the drill onto the workpiece, I am moving the drill forward using this rod that's in the tailstock. And I only have so many inches of travel, and I can then back it up. Okay? So yes, it has this capacity. Now most times this is going to, most students aren't going to use this apparatus. They're going to use a live center. This is a live center because it has ball bearings in it. And loosen this up. This is the tool rest. This is the banjo. We will loosen the tool rest, slide it out of the way, then lock it down in position, adjust the height of the tool rest, and the tailstock will come down and it will be locked into place. This lever will be loose so that we can go ahead, if we had a piece of lumber here, we'd go ahead, bring it to that lumber, snug it up, and then we would secure the piece from coming back by tightening this lever, and then we would begin to turn. Okay? So if I want to move this out of the way, I have two options. One, loosen this and bring this backwards, or two, loosen the tailstock and slide the whole mechanism down the bed of the lathe. This does the banjo or the tool rest has two locking adjustment positions. I usually only use one, and I will put my fingers here so I can do minor adjustments. If I need to just lower the elevation of the tool rest, I loosen this and I can just barely squeeze or relax my hand a little bit to adjust the elevation of the tool rest up and down. If I need to move it, once again, along the length of the bed, loosen the banjo, slide the whole banjo, move it in or out, wherever I need to, then lock the banjo, and it's secured. One other thing that I will say, one safety feature or item that we need to talk about is you must always have safety glasses when you're using this piece of equipment. A shield is even better. They are provided for you. They are over in the lathe cabinet, or they are over at the eyeglass station. But one thing I will say about this is, when you put something in the lathe, don't take for granted that when you put your tool rest here and you have a piece of lumber here, before you turn on the lathe, make sure that you spin the lathe in case your workpiece hits the tool rest, because it can really damage A, the tool rest, B, the lathe, and C, your workpiece. So always give it a gentle turn to make sure it's going to clear anything before you give it power. So we'll go ahead and turn this on once, and you can see that it's variable speed. And that's 2,000, roughly around there, plenty fast. So most of our turning will happen in between 1,000 to 1,200 RPMs, somewhere in this ballpark around here, which is plenty fast, and it's will do anything that you need to do in the world of wood turning. You can slow it down if you have a bigger object. You can slow it down, and of course, if you have smaller, you can speed it up. This is the safety emergency. So if I had this on here, one, I could turn down the control to turn it off. Two, I could use the on-off button here and turn it on. Now it's going to go back on. When I pull this back on, it's going to go back to the original RPM that I had it set to. So I like students to get in the habit of turning it all the way down and then turning it back up. Now let's say something's going wrong and you have a moment where you're about to panic. That's what this magnetic control switch is for, and it's usually here by your leg, and you can just go ahead and turn it off if something, so that your hands are free. That's pretty much it. So if you come over to the lathe and you know you have it turned on, it's plugged in, and make sure it's going in the right direction, should always be spinning towards you, and it won't turn on, check this, make sure that this is turned off. Wait a minute, still not turned on. Well, I don't understand. Pull this out and now see if it spins. So you have a couple of options. You have the control here that can turn it off. You have the on-off button right here, and you also have the emergency shut.